Welcome to the Michael Rivero What Really Happened radio program.
Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, January 28th, 2021. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. We have a lot to talk about today here. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials and keeping us out of trouble. And as usual, we're going to do news until we run out of news, and then we're going to open the phone lines for your comments, questions, observations, and opinions. So let's talk about Joe Biden right now. He's in there just with wearing out pen after pen, signing all these executive orders, which seems more like a dictatorship than a constitutional republic to me, but that's what's going on here. Biden has come out with his new energy policy, which looks an awful lot like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal. Dressed up with executive orders here. And apparently GOP Senator Barrasso is basically saying this is we've heard of this all before and we know it can't work. Now, Biden is getting ready to revoke the Trump abortion policy, and he will instruct the Department of Health and Human Services to open a special enrollment period for the Affordable Care Act through healthcare.gov. Remember Obamacare? It is coming back. Remember how badly they botched the website? Well, that's coming back. And apparently Biden is taking a personal interest in this. But they're going to try and bring back Obamacare, which was a disaster the last time. So, hey, let's try it again. Apparently, Jill Biden is expected to take an active role in the Biden administration's planned task force to reunite children with their parents who were separated at the border. Actually, that's kind of a cool thing for her to be doing. And I wish her much success on that. Apparently, Biden is also going to order the U.S. to admit a huge surge of refugees as soon as tomorrow. Just pour them all in here, and we'll worry about paying to take care of them somewhere down the road. Biden is going to take action to provide U.S. funding, that means your tax dollars, to international abortion providers. And he is, of course, rescinding the policy that seeks to curb abortions worldwide. We're definitely going down the liberal talking points here. This next one is a little concerning. It's a story coming out of Hideout Now. Joe Biden is setting up a Supreme Court Reform Commission, and this looks like the opening salvo in the fight to open up the court to court packing, to increase the number of justices so that Joe Biden can appoint a bunch of liberal gun-grabbing justices and overwhelm the current conservative majority. Meanwhile, Democrats are racing to provide statehood both to Puerto Rico and to the Washington, D.C. enclave. Now, remember, Washington, D.C. is not a state. It's the District of Columbia, and it is its own entity, kind of like the Vatican. And so they're rushing to put that in. But apparently down in Texas, momentum for secession is starting to build. And State Representative Kyle Biederman, who's a Republican, filed House Bill 1359, otherwise called the Texas Independence Referendum Act. And voters would vote in a referendum on November 2nd of this year on whether the state should leave the United States and go back to being an independent republic. If voters agree, then a committee would be formed to examine the matter and make recommendations concerning the best way to break away from the rest of the nation. And looking at the difficulty that Great Britain had leaving the European Union, it is going to be rancorous to say the very least. Now, interestingly enough, Mike Pompeo has landed a spot as a distinguished fellow at the conservative Hudson Institute. And he potentially can use this as a policy platform if he decides he's going to launch a run for the White House in 2024. So he's getting his presidential ambitions in line. All right, Enrique Tarrio, the leader of the Proud Boys, is reported to have had a past as an informer for federal and local law enforcement, repeatedly working undercover for investigators following his arrest in 2012, according to a former prosecutor, and a transcript of a 2014 federal court proceeding obtained by Reuters. Now, in the Miami hearing, a federal prosecutor, a Federal Bureau of Investigation agent, and Tarrio's own lawyer described his undercover work and said he had helped authorities prosecute more than a dozen people in various cases, including drugs, gambling, and human smuggling. Now, Tarrio himself is denying this ever happened. This is a story coming on out of Tethasta.com. He's basically denying claims that he was a prolific law enforcement informant. And you never really can tell. I remember some years back, there was a group called the Tri-State Militia, and it came on out that their communications director was an FBI informant. And if you remember the whole case of Timothy McVeigh, that religious commune that he was hanging out, apparently its founder and operator was also an FBI informant. They're all over the place here. I mean, they've got them on every college campus. They're always spying on you. And, your average FBI informant, just gets the thrill out of being a spy and goes home and abuses themselves to James Bond movies. Now, the FBI is building a conspiracy case regarding the Capitol protest. They're looking at coordination among the various militia groups after 150 people have been arrested for their part in the unpleasantness over there. So they're really trying to go after those people and just, slap them all down and say, don't you dare do that again. Now, over in Arizona, as you're aware, the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors finally agreed to an election audit of its 2020 results. And the county officials approved only 2 companies to perform the audit, both of which had certified the Dominion voting systems before. So, I mean, it's basically, the fox guarding the hen house yet again. More corruption, more election fraud. Speaking of corruption here, Newsweek actually ran a story talking about Jeffrey Epstein and how he was using his powerful friends to make huge amounts of money after his conviction on sex offenses. And he's saying basically it was strange that his famous friends had not shunned the pedophile following his court action, but he was blackmailing them. He had them all by the short and curlies here. Now, Leon Black announced last week he would retire as CEO of Apollo Management following revelations that he paid Epstein the money between 2012 and 2017. So, I mean, it's obvious Epstein was running a honey trap with underage girls, and so many people fell into it. And you have to wonder about what the thought processes are going on in the heads of corporations or powerfully placed individuals where they would go down to that little island in the Caribbean and not know that every single room was wired for sound and video. Or they maybe just didn't care. Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about COVID-19. Interestingly enough, over in France, they were once the pioneers of vaccination, and all of a sudden they are now becoming more and more skeptical of efforts regarding the COVID-19 vaccines. An Ipsos poll conducted in December involving 15 countries found that France ranked at the bottom in terms of willingness to receive a COVID-19 shot. In the poll, only 40% of the population said they wanted the shot. Polls also show that more than 3/4 of nursing home workers did not want to take it. Apparently, the CDC's vaccine injury reporting system is temporarily down. So if you've had an adverse reaction to the shot, well, you're going to have to wait before anybody listens to you here. Interestingly enough, there's a hospital up in Bellevue, Washington State, and apparently they set up a VIP list of their big donors to get the vaccine first. And they have now apologized for emailing about 100 benefactors an invitation to get their vaccines ahead of everybody else, basically cut in line. story coming on out of shtfplan.com. The corporate media is finally starting to admit what we've known for a long time. The COVID-19 shots aren't working, and you can still spread the virus even after having the shot. You can catch COVID, you can pass it on. They're claiming now that all the shots do is reduce the symptoms, but there's no real way to quantify that. And of course, that brings up the question, why even bother getting the jab and putting up with the growing list of side effects? And that is a very, very good question. Okay, the Attorney General of New York State, Letitia James, is accusing the Cuomo administration of severely undercounting the number of COVID-related deaths in nursing homes in the state by as much as 50%. A little bit of a cover-up going there. There is a gentleman, James, going by the first name. He is a certified nursing assistant, and he recorded a video as a whistleblower and basically came on out and said that elderly people are dropping like flies after getting the COVID injection. And James reported that in 2020, very few residents of the nursing home where he works got sick with COVID. None of them died during the entire year of 2020. However, shortly after administering the Pfizer experimental RNA injections, 14 died within 2 weeks, and many others are near death. Remember that story we ran yesterday regarding Gibraltar? Where obviously more people are dying from the shots than from the disease itself. And this mask stuff is getting really silly. Dr. Scott Siegel was being interviewed by NBC News and basically said Americans should consider wearing 4 face masks if they want the most effective protection against COVID. Yeah, he really did say that. Now, Dr. Fauci is advising Americans to begin wearing 2 masks, saying it makes common sense for more than 1 layer to be more effective. So, yeah, let's have 4 layers of chain link fence and see if it keeps out the mosquito. And you watch, somebody's going to come on out and say it's got to be 5 masks. Whoever owns stock in those mask making companies, boy, are they raking in the dough hand over fist. Now, Bill Gates is a little upset at all the conversations on social media that talk about him and his vaccine advocacy and his population control advocacy. And now Bill is looking to enlist the help of big tech to start censoring these offending voices. And they're trying to be, they're calling for actual censorship, proving that these people are not Americans, or they've forgotten what America is supposed to stand for. Now, the Gates Foundation has committed upward of $1.75 billion to help fight the pandemic. But he's out there whining that there are millions of messages out there targeting him and Fauci, and he's saying censorship is needed right now. Over in the Netherlands, the protests over the lockdowns are still going on, and apparently there was this woman was literally thrown against a wall by a water cannon. She needed 15 stitches and suffered a fractured skull. So it's getting ugly out there. Now, meanwhile, and this is a story coming out of IB Times here, the CDC all of a sudden is approving of school reopenings. Now, we had a story yesterday where the CDC said there is no evidence that schools following reasonable precautions represent, a super spreader event, and that the schools can go back to opening, which I think is a good thing. Meanwhile, YouTube, which is owned by Google, has censored over 500,000 videos to protect the globalist COVID hysteria narrative. And apparently YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki, I think that's how it's pronounced, made the announcement in a letter about the platform's priorities in the coming year. And I presume, like Twitter, child porn is still permitted over there. Okay, we have a video that is on the main page of whatreallyhappened.com. It's got a very strange title called Butterfly of the Week, 11 January 2021, hidden in plain sight. And I think it is because of that strange title it has not been yanked, because the content of this video is pointing out a very interesting fact. Okay, the COVID jabs from Pfizer and Moderna are technically not vaccines. They are gene therapy. They are medical devices, and that means they are not covered by the legal protections given the vaccine companies all these years. And that means a really sharp lawyer who's paying attention to this could go into court and say, yes, I understand we can't sue for damages from vaccines, but we're suing for damages from untested gene therapies being put on people with this medical device. And so all these people who are suffering adverse effects from the shots better talk to a lawyer. Get those lawsuits rolling right now. Turning to the international news, the United States is weighing action against Russia for the Navalny detention. This is coming from Secretary of State Blinken. And this is a day after he was confirmed as Secretary of State. And he gave a press conference basically saying that Biden is now mulling actions in response to Navalny's detention in Russia. And I'm sure Russia's attitude is going to be, it's really none of your business. This is an internal affair that you are meddling in. And of course, they're right to say that. But apparently the U.S. response these days is, it is our divine right to meddle in every other country on earth as long as you don't do it back to us. Now, Blinken is also saying that Iran must comply with the nuclear deal before the U.S. comes to any new agreement. And basically saying that Iran has to come back to full compliance with its obligations under the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. I'm sure Iran won't hesitate to do that. Anything that they've done that's outside the P5+1 deal has been for political symbolism more than anything else here. Now, Blinken's comments come after Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said the U.S. must take the first step. Writing in Foreign Affairs last week, Zarif called on Biden to unconditionally lift sanctions if he's serious about restoring the Iran treaty. And I can stand why Iran's reticence, because when the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action Treaty was signed, the U.S. immediately failed to meet their commitments. They not only kept a lot of the sanctions in place, they added new ones. Congress just voted all these new sanctions on. And then, of course, Trump unilaterally pulled out of the agreement. So basically, you know, Iran has a right to be skeptical about Biden's sincerity. Over in Israel, the IDF Chief of Staff, Aviv Kohavi, says that he has ordered the military to draw up new plans to attack Iran's nuclear program. He also issued a warning to Joe Biden against reviving the Iran nuclear deal. Kohavi's comments are just like the latest threatening comments towards Iran from other Israeli officials. So they're out there. And the Israeli military is asking for $1.2 billion with a B dollars to prepare to attack Iran. Gee, I wonder who they're planning on getting that money from. So the Israeli military is out there saying they need over $1 billion to fund its widely promoted strike on Iran, which Tel Aviv has threatened to carry out if the United States should rejoin the nuclear deal. Well, if I were Biden, and I'm glad I'm not, I would basically say, you know, Israel, if you launch an attack on Iran, we will launch an attack on you. Of course, he can't do that with all of Israel's minions running Washington, D.C. Meanwhile, Biden's United Nations nominee to the UN during confirmation hearings vows to work against the BDS movement. We got to take a break for commercials, and we will be right back. Welcome back to our show here. And again, a friendly reminder that Republic Broadcasting Network is going to go on keeping the American public fully informed so that they can make good choices in the spirit of Thomas Jefferson. But to do that, we need your continuing support. And I'd like to extend a heartfelt thanks to those of you who have supported Republic Broadcasting Network. And I wish I could say we don't need any more, but we absolutely do. So the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity, cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. The network thanks you. And of course, all of this contact information can be found at the top of republicbroadcasting.org, which is a really cool website for you to hang out at. Okay, so we're talking about the international news here. And apparently the Biden administration sent a B-52 bomber over the Persian Gulf. It was a long-range flight from the U.S. to the Persian Gulf, trying to send a warning message to Iran after a missile was fired on Riyadh. The problem with that is that a group nobody has previously ever heard of before took credit for that missile launch. So they sent this B-52H Stratoforce, long-range heavy bomber, flew from Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana and made a continuous flight across Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and down the eastern Saudi coastline near the United Arab Emirates and Qatar before returning to the United States. And we were talking yesterday about the venerable B-52 is now being modernized, but it's been flying 75 years. You know, it's an amazing airframe. Okay. Apparently, Joe Biden has frozen billions of dollars of arms sales to the Middle East, including the F-35s to the United Arab Emirates and smart bombs for Saudi Arabia. Actually, the UAE doesn't know how lucky they are to have gotten out of that deal, given the past performance of the F-35 here. As far as Saudi Arabia is concerned, it's basically been politically damaging to Mohammed bin Salman. It's basically isolated him politically because he was supposed to be basing his authority as crown prince on his ability to get these weapons from the United States. Apparently, China military planes have entered the Taiwan defensive zone again. This is the second time in a little over a week, trying to send a message. And the message apparently appears to be that independence means war. And both sides are now conducting war games. And we now have a U.S. carrier group in the South China Sea. China's response was to fly a dozen aircraft in Taiwan's airspace, while further announcing military drills in the Gulf of Tonkin. And now China is warning Taiwan, independence means war. So we're headed for a conflict there. We're not going to get out of the Biden administration without a major war. That's a prediction I'm willing to make right now. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the economic news. And I think probably the biggest economic news right now is being called the Gamestop Controversy. And what it basically involved is Gamestop is a company with a chain of 5,000 retail stores nationwide selling and renting video games. But Wall Street investors expect their stock to go down because people are now basically accessing their video games online rather than buying the physical video games to bring home. Call me a Luddite. I like having the actual physical disc for a movie or whatever. So there's been a lot of shorting of the stock by hedge funds. Basically a group of people got together. It was a Reddit group, Wall Street Bets, and they basically organized to all of them buy GameStop stock at the same time, sending the price soaring. And this put a short squeeze on these hedge funds. and sent them scrambling to try and sell their shares as quickly as possible before the value soared even further. And by Wednesday, GameStop's value had rocketed to $347.51 per share. And apparently the small investors who caused the price to soar used free trading apps like Robinhood to buy the GameStop stock. And apparently hedge funds Citron and Melvin Capital had closed out their short positions. They will not disclose how large their losses were. So apparently big tech is biting back. Robinhood has suspended trading on GameStop, and Discord bans Wall Street bets over the GameStop surge. You can hear the screaming coming from Wall Street. How dare you cheat us the way that we cheat you? It's supposed to be a one-way deal. We got to take another break for commercials, and we will be right back. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking about the economy. We're talking about the GameStop incident, which put the market into a turmoil. Now, as we mentioned before, Reddit had shut down the Wall Street Bets subgroup that had sort of organized this sort of coordinated buying here. And they used as an excuse that there was racism and hate speech inside the group. Well, apparently somebody took a look at that and said, you got to be completely out of your mind. And as of the last report, Reddit has reopened the subgroup Wall Street Bets to so everybody can get together and talk. Reddit shut down the subpage yesterday afternoon after these rookie stock market investors joined together to purchase the stock in targeted companies, mostly GameStop, which caused a major disruption. And apparently some hedge funds actually went bust because they were betting heavily that GameStop was going to go down, and they got caught in a short squeeze. And well, they're not here anymore. And tip of the hat to Elon Musk, because Tesla just announced their first ever annual profit with earnings of $721 million in 2020. Now, this doesn't come up to Wall Street's expectations, but it's still great that after all this time, they're finally starting to make money over there. Article coming out of Investment Watch blog, basically talking about unsound banking and why most of the world's banks are headed for collapse. You know, high risk, not really taking care of their ordinary depositors. And as a result, we're seeing banks like Huntington Bank is closing nearly 200 branches. TD Bank is going to close 81 branches, including 11 just in Philadelphia. So they're out there in trouble. My heart bleeds for these poor money junkies. I can't tell you how sorry I feel for them. All right, story coming out of SHTF Plan. China is basically beginning what might be called their dress rehearsal for when they overtake the United States. And they're talking about the economy. And according to CNN, as 2020 was coming to a close, China signed a trade agreement with the EU with the aim of boosting growth and giving European companies greater access to its 1.4 billion consumers. And China emerged from the COVID-19 shock earlier than the rest of the world, and authorities are planning for the future. And apparently Francois Huang, a senior economist for Asia Pacific at Euler Hermes, did a report saying the world is moving east fast. And I don't think it's that the world is moving east so much as that it's very obvious the United States is in a self-induced decline. All right, now, there's still a lot of confusion going around about the stimulus payments, and apparently Biden is looking at changing the income threshold below which you would get a stimulus check here. But apparently, if you do not receive your fully promised payment, you can actually claim the missing money when you file your 2020 tax return. So it's something you may want to stick in your little tax file there. Getting on to immigration and globalism, apparently the founder of We Build the Wall, Brian Kolfage, knows where illegals are coming through the border wall right now, and nobody wants to listen to him. Corporate media is absolutely ignoring him and pretending he doesn't exist. So, getting into some science news. Boeing's Starliner will attempt to redo its failed flight test in March, and was probably one of the most high-profile failures of 2019. Boeing's high-priced and oft-delayed Starliner spacecraft fell well short of its goal of reaching the International Space Station on a test flight. The spacecraft did make it back to Earth in one piece, but NASA decided the company would need to attempt the mission again before it would allow any of its astronauts to set foot inside. You know, this is all healthy competition between Boeing and Blue Origin and, of course, SpaceX. And I'm a big fan of SpaceX because they're really doing great there. So anyway, Starliner is ready to fly again, and they're going to have the test. It's currently scheduled for Thursday, March 25th. Now, about 20 days from now, the latest Mars probe, Perseverance, is going to touch down on the surface of Mars, and assuming it survives the landing, which is always high risk, this is the first probe to go to Mars since the Viking missions, specifically to look for evidence of life. Now, NASA keeps being cagey and say, we're looking for evidence of past life. But if they confirm there's life on Mars, then we're going to get Dr. Gilbert Levin back on the show because he deserves some vindication after all these years. Speaking of SpaceX, they are adding laser links to 10 of their Starlink satellites that are in polar orbit in order to make accessing those satellites from higher latitudes much easier. So they're moving forward here. We started to talk about this story yesterday. We're going to talk about it a little bit now. Last month, Uber unloaded its self-driving unit Advanced Technologies Group to Aurora to accelerate the development of the Aurora Driver, which is hoping to become the autonomous driving platform powering everything from passenger vehicles to heavy-duty trucks. So far, hasn't really been a smooth, evolved technology as some of the Tesla owners can tell you. And as I mentioned yesterday, I'm a gadget freak. I love really cool gadgets and computers and stuff. But I am very concerned that, especially pushed forward by the COVID panic, companies are turning to automation, and there are fewer and fewer jobs available for ordinary Americans, even as more refugees and immigrants pour through our border. And you can see that at some point there will be a collapse, intended or not. Anyway, getting on back to this, Aurora is backed by names like Amazon and Sequoia, with Uber now reportedly holding a more than 25% stake in the company following last month's deal. Aurora was co-founded by Chris Urmson, who headed Google's self-driving division for nearly 8 years and is one of the most widely regarded names in the self-driving vehicle area. So they're going to go on out there. Story, this is coming on out from National Review. Apparently, Alexa can be hacked. Instagram retains data you think you've deleted, and apparently there is a new brand of Linux malware found by the NSA and FBI. So check your security and never say anything around Alexa that you don't want to go on out. Now, we have Alexa on our streaming TV, our Fire Stick, and the good news there is Alexa doesn't listen to you unless you're holding down the button. And I've tested it, so I know that that's really what's going on here. Apparently, the Defense Intelligence Agency has admitted to Senator Ron Wyden that they do, in fact, buy location data from your smartphone location. They buy it from brokers, and the data isn't separated by whether a person lives in the United States or outside of it. And of course, all of this is being done without any kind of a search warrant. And data brokers are companies that collect and sell people's information. And they collect the information by paying app makers and websites for it. Once the broker has the information, they aggregate it and selling whoever's willing to pay for it, which today includes the United States government. All righty, another story, this one coming out of Zero Hedge. If Facebook is private, why are they feeding users private messages directly to the FBI? Now, despite decrying censorship when it happened to them last year, when Trump was banned from Twitter and Facebook earlier this month, the left praised the move by big tech. Well, now, Facebook is a private company and they can do what they want. The pro-censorship hypocritical crowd chanted. But they've said time and again, Facebook being private is simply not true. And it's not a problem for me because I don't use them anymore. And in any event, common sense has to tell you, don't put anything on any social media that you do not want to be public information. Okay? Learn encryption. Don't use something off the shelf because the NSA knows how to break all of that stuff. But you're really silly if you put up, your nude photos or confessions about how you're fooling around with your neighbor's wife or anything like that. You shouldn't put it up there. Just common sense. Just think about why people look at their computers and think it's a private world. I don't know, but it's simply not true. Speaking of privacy, Apple is coming out with an app tracking transparency tool, which lets users decide whether they agree to their data being tracked across different apps and websites. It's going to be rolling out in a matter of months. I noticed there was sort of a forerunner of this in the iOS 14, which came with our iPhone XR. Where you can go on in and tick off, I don't want these people getting my information. And, me personally, I don't really care. I'm not doing anything I'm ashamed of, but it's still nice to have the option. So apparently they're saying as part of a new release of iOS 14, iPadOS 14, and tvOS 14, the feature will require apps to get the user's permission before tracking their data across other companies' apps or websites for advertising purposes. Now, as you can understand, this has upset a few people out there who make money off of you by selling your information to advertisers. And apparently, Facebook is considering filing an antitrust lawsuit against Apple, alleging that Apple abused its power through the App Store rules. And apparently, the report cites the usual anonymous sources and notes that Facebook may ultimately opt against the suit, but they're obviously very upset. I remember some years ago, the advertisers want to get to you no matter what. And many years ago, when I first was getting together with Claire, and we brought over her VHS, we all remember VHS, this VCR had a cool feature. When you recorded something on it, it would mark the commercials. And when you played the tape back, it would automatically fast forward. And I thought that was so hip. And I noticed that feature was never, ever, ever available again on any VCR or, for that matter, DVD player here. All right, we've been hearing about the Brave browser. And apparently, they are starting to implement what's called the IPFS protocol to create a decentralized web browser. I think that's a good idea. And, the internet has seen a lot of evolution over its relatively short lifespan. Vast number of corporations work to earn your precious screen time, with many of their behaviors setting off red flags in regard to user privacy. So Brave is going to be implementing the IPFS protocol, which is short for the Interplanetary File System. And what it does is it grabs information from a network of distributed nodes rather than a centralized server. like what we get from HTTP in most other web browsers. And that's going to make it much more difficult for those bits and pieces of websites to be able to actually track you. I think it's a really, really good idea. Meanwhile, over at Malwarebytes, they're basically saying they were hacked by the same group who breached SolarWinds. And apparently they've done a thorough audit of all their products and source code. Their software remains safe. It wasn't compromised the way that some of the SolarWinds Orion software was, but they are admitting to the intrusion. Meanwhile, SolarWinds itself, which was targeted by this massive cyber attack, is hiring Kamala Harris's husband's former Chinese Communist Party linked law firm as lobbyists. And they're basically, Emhoff previously served as a partner in DLA Piper's intellectual property and technology practice and its media, sport, and entertainment sector. Emhoff departed the firm on November 10th in an effort to work with the transition team to develop the portfolio he will focus on to support the work of Biden. So a lot of politics going on over there. All righty, little bit of good news. This is coming in from Forbes, no less. The world's biggest malware botnet is no more. And apparently law enforcement agencies around the globe teamed up to take control of Emotet, one of the world's most prolific malware botnets. The FBI, Europol, the UK's National Crime Agency, and other authorities worked for 2 years to map the infrastructure of Emotet and track the money behind it. Now, this was first spotted as a banking Trojan back in 2014 and eventually evolved to become a point of entry for other types of malware and ransomware. And Emotet was instrumental in some of the worst cyber attacks in recent times and enabled up to 70% of the world's malwares, including the likes of TrickBot and Ryuk, said Nigel Leary, Deputy Director of the UK's Cybercrime Unit. So, little good news, they took it down. There'll be another new one tomorrow. We all know that. But we need to get more aggressive on that issue here, because computers are no longer toys. They are indispensable parts of our everyday lives. They are critical infrastructure on which our economy depends. And I view all cybercrime and malware basically as a clear and present danger to the national security. And I wish our government would kind of give it that kind of Manhattan Project priority. Anyway, we already talked about Apple coming up with a big privacy change in early spring, and they're having that fist fight with Facebook there. Alrighty, apparently, there's a lot of programming languages out there, and people who are just learning how to code are trying to figure out what one to use. Apparently, Python remains the most popular programming language to learn, but some of the other older ones are still out there. I was surprised to find plain vanilla C is still quite popular, and a lot of people are hiring C programmers. All right, we got to take another break for commercials. We'll be right back after these few words. Anyway, welcome back to our show here. We're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines now. Area code 512-248-8252, and getting on back to computers. Apparently, there's been another phishing campaign specifically targeting the construction and energy sectors to expose their credentials. And apparently, these credentials were publicly viewable using a Google search. Now, Checkpoint Research published a blog post describing the campaign in which stolen information was dumped on compromised WordPress domains. Well, that was a big, bad mistake there. Okay, there's an organization called Seagrass, and they walk their talk regarding cleaning up the environment, and apparently they collect up to 900 million plastic items in the Mediterranean Sea each and every year. and they're talking about how the floor of the Mediterranean, along with a lot of ancient shipwrecks found by Dr. Ballard, the seafloor is a final sink for plastics from land sources. Unfortunately, part of the plastics lying on the seafloor are washed back up on the shoreline. It gets ingested by sea life. And the big problem are the microplastics and in larger debris that, get inside the life forms. I remember seeing a photo a while back. This was actually in Hawaii. A sea lion had gotten a beer brace, the little 6-pack, the little plastic part, the brace, stuck around its neck. And it was just horrible. Okay, the phone lines are starting to load up here, so let's go to Al in Canada. Hello, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Biodegradable.
Perfect. I sent you a couple of emails. You were talking about posting on social media and how it can turn around and bite you in the butt.
Yes.
And I have a friend that's going through this right now. And, he's lost his job. He's been dragged through the mud on a couple of newspapers up here in Canada and some websites by some, so some social justice warrior found him out. Anyway, his life is ruined. And it just goes to show you that, even though what he was saying was a lot, was pretty hateful, but
yeah,
there is no such thing as free speech up here in Canada, and it's diminishing down in the United States as well.
Well, it is, but I'm one of those people that thinks the right to freedom of speech comes with it a responsibility, to be accurate in what you're saying. And, not to abuse the privilege. Unfortunately, a lot of the people shouting all of this hate and racism are actually working for the government, trying to build a case for more online censorship.
Mike, I have no doubt in my mind that you're absolutely correct.
Okay.
Another email I sent you was a YouTube video.
Okay, can you stay on the line, Al? All right, I'm going to put you on hold. We got to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phones are open, area code 512-248-8252. We're talking with Al in Canada, and Al, just pick up where you left off.
Okay, I was talking about Dr. Fauci.
Yes.
And the inventor of the PCR test, Kerry Mullis, I guess that's how you pronounce his name, Mullis. I sent you a link to a video on YouTube where this guy is actually describing Dr. Fauci as a liar.
Yes.
And not only that, but he's like one of these, what would you call it, attention hounds, right?
Yes.
And Mike, that can be proven just looking at that pitch that he threw. Jesus Maria. Mike, do you know anybody, and that includes yourself, that would dare do something like that, knowing that it could be so horrible?
Well, I certainly wouldn't. That's probably one of the reasons why I'm so poor.
Yeah, but it was so pathetic. It proves, it actually backs up what this guy Kerry says about Fauci, which is he could just go right in front of those cameras because he's an attention monger.
Yeah.
He's a short little man. Right? He's probably got the Napoleon complex.
Probably.
Just go up and just lie to people. Right? Make it up as he goes. And that video proves that guy Fauci has no business being where he is, especially making more than the president of the United States, whoever it is. Right? Like that's sad. And on top of that, someone pointed out something a long time ago, almost a year ago. When was the last time this guy actually saw a patient? Does he even know what?
Been a while.
Does he
it's been a while. I'm more interested in how many of his patients survived.
Yeah, it's a good point. I appreciate your time, Mike. Thanks a lot. And
all right, well, thanks an awful lot. Thank you for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Joe in California. Hello, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hi, Mike. We got to give Al in Canada a yellow card. He violated that new rule that one of the previous callers prescribed by asking you how you were doing. So yellow card for Al.
All right, yellow card. We'll put that in the mail tomorrow.
Okay. Well.
Okay.
All right. Now, getting that out of the way, how are you, Mike?
Doing fine. Yellow card for you.
Okay. Mike, just quickly, I heard Layla's call from yesterday, and her words were most kind. So, shukran, Layla. Mike, before I get to my main point, I just want to ask Tom in Florida what is his opinion on buying a property in Florida? I'm looking at Florida. Actually, a neighbor of mine is looking in the Tampa area. I'm interested as well. Maybe Tampa, Naples, maybe on the other side of the state. So I just wanted to get Tom's view. I mean, he's there. He's on the ground. Is it a good time to buy in Florida? Obviously, so many people are migrating there. But where does he see Florida in 10 or 15 years? I'd love to get his view on that.
Okay, well, let me ask you one quick question. In terms of your work and your career, are you involved in high tech?
No.
Oh, okay. Because Miami is going to become a new, Silicon Beach or something like that.
Well, you also have the big New York financial houses moving to Miami.
Yeah, they're doing that as well.
I'm just worried about where the state's going to be. I mean, we're hearing, Texas is currently red, but it's turning. Maybe it's on its way to becoming blue.
It may be, but again, they may just break off and form their own republic again.
Right. No doubt. But Florida, where is Florida in all this? Is Florida going to turn? Because I think Tom may have said it, that Trump won the state by 3 points. That's not a lot. I mean, Florida may be blue in 5 years with all this expected surge in immigration into the country under these extremists that we currently have in Washington. So I just wanted to get his view. And then finally, Mike, who do you see currently, as putting Trump aside, as a favorite to look for in 2024? Is it Rand Paul? Because I'm really liking what I'm hearing from him. I haven't always been a big fan of his, but I think maybe he's turned a corner, and maybe he's the guy to look out for and support.
Well, the problem I have with that is I'm having a hard time building enthusiasm for supporting anybody, knowing that the elections are as badly rigged as they are. It's like, what's the point?
Of course. Of course.
Okay.
That's the problem. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, it is.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
All right. I'll vote for Santa Claus for president, actually, I think. Talk about a socialist state there. Okay, and we're going to switch over now to Mark in North Carolina. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I just thinking what you said that Lincoln said about Putin.
Yeah.
I mean, how hypocritical. What I think Putin should do is he should just laugh and say, "You still got Julian Assange in prison, okay?"
Yes.
By the way, this guy, what's his name, Gulami, whatever his name is, he's only going to jail for 30 days. He should remind Blinken, too, that they want to put these protesters and for the Capitol protesters in prison for years.
Yes.
They've got this guy now. They want to put this guy for a meme, an anti. This was a Slick Willie meme back in 2016.
Yeah, I saw that one. Yep.
Put him in prison for 10 years. That's what Putin should answer. I mean, what hypocrisy.
Yes.
I don't believe this country anymore, the kind of leadership we got, okay?
Yep.
And this guy Blinken is just another tool of Israel, from what I understand, too. I think he may even be a dual citizen, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, this country is in terrible shape. Mike, I just don't know where we're going to go anymore. There was some hopeful stuff, though. I was listening on InfoWars today. They had, for the second day in a row, they had somebody from the Boogaloo Boys.
Yeah.
They're saying, they're right-wing fascist Nazis. No, these guys are actually working together with Antifa and Black Lives Matter. Okay? They're just establishment, anti-government. And these guys are ready to take it to the government if the things keep on going the way it's going, And Jones was calling them tools of the FBI and this and that, or the government.
Well, it's possible. I mean, if you look at the controversy around the leader of the Proud Boys, it's being reported he's an FBI informant. He's denying it, of course, but we don't really know.
Well, you always got to be careful. Any organization could be infiltrated by the FBI. That's the whole thing. And this is nothing new.
Well, they haven't infiltrated us yet.
Huh? Yeah.
They haven't infiltrated us yet. Because I don't think Claire works for the FBI. Okay.
No. But,
he's laughing now.
I bet you they're listening. I'll bet you they're listening to the show. I mean, they've been doing stuff like this.
I'm sure they are. Greetings, FBI. J. Edgar Hoover was a cross-dresser. That's why organized crime was able to blackmail him.
Of course. I mean, Hoover was, from the day this cross-dressing pervert created the FBI.
Yes.
They were no good. All right. Yep. And they were basically they were all they did was they pretended their reputation was they couldn't be touched, but that's because they would they wouldn't get into really serious investigations. Basically about turning people against each other. That's what they've always been about.
Well, they grandstand a lot here, and the other part was they exercised a tremendous control over the media. There was a movie called The FBI Story, starring not Gregory Peck. Who am I thinking of? Was Air Force General. I can't remember his name. Anyway, it was a well-received movie. Interestingly enough, J. Edgar Hoover was actually on the soundstage telling the director how to direct the movie to present the correct image of the FBI. And, there are FBI informants all over the studio system in Hollywood. And anytime anybody's working on a script that is going to make the FBI look bad, the FBI intrudes. There was even a Disney movie, I think it was called That Darned Cat. There was a scene in there of a burglar leaving a building holding a filing cabinet labeled FBI, and the FBI said, "You will take that out of there."
That movie with Leon DiCaprio, directed by Clint Eastwood, a few years ago, that was also, it really showed what a dirtbag Hoover was. Now, I knew that before, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people think, oh, he was outstanding. No, he wasn't. He was a dirtbag from the word go.
Mm-hmm.
Pervert. The guy was a megalomaniac, and the only reason he stayed in as long as he did, he had files on just about everybody. Any politician,
yes, he did.
All he would do is open up files, and that was, and right away,
even blackmail John F. Kennedy.
Just like yeah. But unfortunately, Kennedy, the only thing that really had him, he liked to play around. So what? But I guess back in those days,
what Hoover had on JFK is that one of JFK's playing around turned out to be a Soviet spy. That's what Hoover had on JFK.
Yeah, I heard that. I don't know if it's really true, but I did hear it. I heard that today. Whether it was real, whether it really was a Soviet spy or not, anybody's guess,
Okay.
But I also believe Hoover was behind the murder of JFK and Martin Luther King and RFK. So this guy was, like I said, the FBI is bad news. It's always been bad news until they're either disbanded or completely remodeled. They can continue to be bad news.
Yes.
So I'm glad that people are starting to get together now, even on the left and the right, the populist left and the populist right, and starting to understand what they're facing,
Yes.
And I'm very glad about what they did on Wall Street. This is beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It's wonderful to behold.
They got to need to do more of that stuff and take these billionaires down. These billionaires are the biggest threat to our freedom today. Okay?
Absolutely. But apparently, for every $7, the GameStop stock went up. The hedge funds lost $1 billion.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it.
Yep.
All right, Mike. That's it, all right? No, you got other calls.
All right, thanks an awful lot here. And by the way, the actor whose name I could not remember in the FBI story is Jimmy Stewart. And I don't know why I blanked on that, but that's who it was. All right, we're going to go to Layla in Canada. Hello, Layla. Welcome back to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I wanted to correct something that I had said yesterday, that Trump had given a pardon to Jonathan Pollard. The only reason I think it's important to correct my error is the perception that people have of Trump with regard to what actually happened. Pollard was actually on parole.
Yes.
And Trump influenced the Justice Department not to extend his parole and to allow Pollard to leave the U.S. and go to Israel.
Where he was greeted as a hero.
Did give. Yeah, where he's going to be, and also benefit Netanyahu during this once again hotly contested election in Israel.
Yes.
But the one that Trump did pardon was the Israeli retired officer who had actually recruited Pollard.
Yes.
That man was never extradited to the U.S. because the Israelis refused to extradite him for all those 30 or 35 years. And he was kept safe in Israel. And now Trump simply issued a pardon so nobody could ever request his extradition.
But Assange and Snowden are still in trouble.
Meanwhile, yes, exactly. Assange and Snowden are still languishing. The men who actually helped Trump get elected. So we all talk about George Orwell and perhaps Aldous Huxley and all those as being prescient in terms of the world that we're living in today.
Yes.
I would go back to Shakespeare, who said, all the world's a stage. And in my opinion, I would add to that there is no more corrupt stage than the global political stage. They are, again, the elite of the world who all cooperate with each other, be they monarchs or common people who made all the compromises necessary to reach that level.
Yes.
It's just tragic. We no longer have principles of understand the principle of ethics and behaving ethically and being responsible for the people that we profess to be caring about. But back to, as someone referred to, remember Jesus once said that man does not live. Well, you said you are not a rich man because you have principles, or you implied it was because of your principles. Well,
yes.
Jesus said that man does not live by bread alone. That comes from an ancient belief in that area of the world and during that time. And in fact, even in Egypt today, the word for bread is life, esh. So, and so basically people who actually are followers of Christ must look again at their support for Zionism.
Yes, I agree.
Recognize that if you're going to call yourself a Christian Zionist, you have sold your soul. You are either a Christian or a Zionist. You cannot be both. And as for the Jews who have a religion that they respect and revere, consider whether Zionism is actually a religion, which they have managed to persuade so many Jews it is. Zionism is not Judaism.
No, it's a political philosophy.
There is a difference.
Yes.
Zionism is a militaristic philosophy, as was Islam. I'm not going to pretend that I hold Islamism any higher than Zionism. These are militaristic movements. However, there are people who do adhere to the ethical principles within the original religion that can be found in any religion, whether you look at Buddhism or any other religion.
Whoops. I think we just lost Layla, and that's a shame here. All right, so let's go to Marco in Alabama. Hello, Marco. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, what's happening? I wanted to respond to Joe in California. If you plan on moving to Florida, probably one of the best places that I would definitely look at would be like the Floribama line. I mean, like Destin, Florida, Pensacola, Orange Beach, Cocoa Beach. These are the best areas, dude, to retire, dude, because you're safe, relatively safe, dude, from hurricanes and things like that. Because a lot of times, dude, they'll either skiff, a little bit more due to the west and hit Louisiana. than this area of Florida. I mean, yeah, recently, we had that F5, tornado, but, there's really no safe place, dude. I mean, I used to live on the Gulf Coast of Florida. I lived in Bradenton. I lived in Marco Island. I lived in Siesta Key. Those are all beautiful areas of Florida. I would never touch, dude, the East Coast of Florida, dude, with a 10-foot pole. I do not like, Fort Lauderdale or Miami or Jacksonville or any of these places. Right now, the Gulf Coast of Florida is where it's at. I mean, the European tourists don't even go to Miami anymore, in all reality. The people from Brazil on holiday don't go to Miami. They all go to these areas, dude, that are around here. I mean, if you like a scenic pirate feel, the Tampa, St. Pete, area feels like the Caribbean. And honestly and truly, where I would see Florida, in the next 10 years, I mean, let's be real, you guys. We had minority support with Donald Trump because, he was, the better of the two candidates. But now the Republican Party is seen as weak, dude, because they lost the election, and we're going to lose all of this minority support, and they're going to go back to voting what they were used to, and that is for Democrats. I mean, maybe the Cubans would be more principled and all that stuff, but all the other race groups, dude, that are currently coming to Florida, dude, are going to go back to Democrats, dude, because they're going to sit here and see, that they have no choice, dude, and they're going to vote for raises for themselves, and they're going to vote for immigration, dude, for their family members and all that stuff, dude, and
they're
right
going to
now,
vote
the
for bread and
Republican Party
circuses.
is in so much disarray. I mean, it's just like, honestly and truly, I mean, some people will sit here and say DeSantis for president, but he's a good governor, and I don't want him to be president, dude, because in all reality, you want to have Florida as a place where you can go, and you need the stable people, dude, and we need to sit here and build from within and start, I mean, if you don't like
Marco,
something,
gotta let you go. Sorry to cut you off, but we got to take a commercial break, and we are coming back with more calls after these few words. Welcome back to our show here, and Layla is back on the line. I guess that little string between our two paper cups broke, and we tied it back together, and we can talk to each other. So, Layla, what's on your mind?
I just wanted to wrap up and just say that I mean, it's ironic how often my calls are dropped just as I'm discussing Zionism or something of that nature. But anyway, with regard to Trump, I have certainly lost faith. I do not see him as a victim, but as a player who's playing the victim card. I think he was very much in a collusion with the things that unfolded. And further to Joe's question about Florida, anything north of Miami, at least 2 hours north of Miami, and I wouldn't exclude the East Coast. There's someone who calls into your show, Mike, Mo from Florida.
Yeah.
We talk about St. Lucie being a wonderful place to live. That's in an area called the Treasure Coast. Now, it's on the ocean or close to the Atlantic Ocean. So, it may be a problem, but lately they have not had hurricanes like they did in the past. It seems for some reason in recent years they've been safe they've been out of that hurricane tunnel, but anything along there, Stewart, St. Lucie, any of those areas, from what I'm hearing from people who live there, it does not even have a lot of migrants. The illegal migrants seem to be staying around the Miami area.
Yeah.
So it might be a place worth looking at. Anyway, my apologies for the dropped call. I don't think I'm being paranoid, but I'm with my passport being delayed or withheld. Along with this, I'm beginning to wonder. Anyway, best to all. Bye for now.
All right. Thanks, Layla, for the phone call. And we're going to switch over to Pat in Fort Worth. Pat, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi. I'm not going to answer all that other stuff while I was waiting, but I just wanted to say that, Mueller, the one who went after Trump for the impeachment thing for so long, was in charge of the FBI at 9/11. And 9/11 went down, right?
Yes.
Okay. He refused to let them, as being the head of the FBI, he refused to let them investigate it. But what they did find out, I don't know when it right this second, but that they watched how stock moved around.
Yes.
Remember?
I remember.
So whoever I think Trump's doing the same thing. Do you know the details of it? It don't come to me right now, but I'll find it, that he's doing the same thing right now and giving people a chance to get out of certain things that would incriminate them. Have you heard that?
No, I have not heard that.
Keep your ears open, your eyes open, okay? I just thought I'd put it into you because you find out stuff. You have sources or whatever.
Okay.
Okay? All right. That's all I wanted to say. I'll let you go.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you for the phone call, Pat. We're going to switch over to Peter in Los Angeles. Peter, I may have to take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I wanted to chime in that I have the same paranoia that Layla does sometimes.
Yes.
When I find that my whatever I'm doing when it comes to Zionism, the call will drop or the website will go down or something. But getting on to the informant discussion you were having.
Yes.
I wanted to bring up a couple that might be interesting and maybe people had forgotten. One was back in the 60s, the only non-black member of the Black Panthers was an Asian guy who was venerated by the Black Panther Party, and as he's a cultural icon in the Bay Area. I can't remember the guy's name. He was made the armorer of the Black Panther Party, the weapons expert armorer, and it turned out that he was an FBI informant.
Well, yes, then, the FBI definitely went after the Black Panthers.
Yeah, the other one, which is interesting, very interesting, has been completely swept under the rug since then, was the Rod Blagojevich replacing Barack Obama's Senate seat and Rahm Emanuel's congressional seat, and how they were selling it, and Obama was heavily involved in selling his seat, and they restricted the court thing. They got Blagojevich, but they completely, maintained walls around Obama and Rahm Emanuel. But when they were doing that, and all these people were bidding on Obama's Senate seat, one of which was Jesse Jackson Jr. And Jesse Jackson Jr., I think he finally went to a mental hospital or something later, but he was one of the principal bidders to Blagojevich and Obama for Obama's seat. And when it became known in the press, he said, I can't be, I'm an FBI informant. This guy was
I remember that.
Congressman.
Yep.
And we talked about it, Mike. He was a sitting Democratic congressman, and he admitted he was an FBI informant as a sitting Democratic.
Okay, Peter, stay on the line. Stay on the line. I got to put you on hold. We got to take a break for commercials. I'm going to come back to you after these few words. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Peter in Los Angeles about informants, and folks, they really are out there. Usually they're recruited in college, and then after they graduate, they stay in the network. And it's a penetration and surveillance of the American people that would make the Stasi blush. So, Peter, just sort of pick up where you left off.
Well, and it's not just the FBI, but it's you can say the deep state as a whole, and say that they plant their moles, like for Anderson Cooper, who has the CIA background, right? Everybody knows where what's his name, the Israeli CNN guy who used to work for AIPAC. What the hell? I never watched it. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I don't remember the name, but I remember the story. Yeah.
By AIPAC, and he's been there now. He's their top guy. I wish I could think of his name, but since I don't watch it, thankfully I've forgotten it. But it's all over the place how they do this, and it's also amazing, by the way, as Layla was talking about with the handler for Jonathan Pollard. It's been that way. By the way, Biden just appointed the head of Director Clapper's job, the Director of National Intelligence, the person to whom the head of the CIA and the NSA reports, as well as the head of cybersecurity, they're all like basically Zionist plants.
Yes.
And back in the day, back around 2006 or 7, when they had when they caught the Apex spy scandal with Rosenberg and Rosenblum and what's his name, and they had Jane Harman, Jewish congresswoman, who was on the House Intelligence Committee and wanted to be head of she wanted to be chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, and they got her. The Jewish lobby did, and the Israelis, saying, listen, if you cover up this Apex spy scandal where they're passing secrets from the Defense Department to AIPAC, if you cover that up, we guarantee you we're going to put you in as the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee.
Yes, and it did happen.
Even back then, they had they could rely, and Harman, a long-term player, knew that they could do that.
Yes.
It turned out that it became known that Pelosi couldn't make that appointment because it was too obvious then. But, I mean, and now they have the director of national intelligence, the deputy director of the CIA, the director of the CIA, the secretary of state. Of course, the secretary of treasury is always a Jewish appointee, always. Just like the head of the Federal Reserve is always Jewish. There's certain, like the chief of staff now. It's been a while since we have one. Lisa, that's almost a foregone conclusion. That the chief of staff at the White House, the guy who grants access to the president, the gatekeeper, that's almost always a Jewish guy. I mean, and then you can couple that with the billionaires that Mark was talking about. He's right about that. But the really dangerous billionaires are the Jewish billionaires who run the media and just ousted the president, just falsified an election.
Yes.
And anybody who talks about it is censored. I mean, those are the billionaires that have to go first. That's the absolutely imperative. We got to break that up, and we got to go after these guys first. You can't have a dialogue anywhere. There's no opposition that can coalesce. There's no legitimate political opposition that can confront them because they won't allow it. So, anyways, that's my thing for the day, Mike. Thanks very much.
All right, thanks an awful lot there. And the phone lines are open, area code 512-248-8252. And we're going to go to Dave in Michigan. Hello, Dave. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey there, Mike. How you doing, man?
Hanging in.
Good. Hey, well, first off, I want to say that if you got questions, just ask your favorite relatives, Uncle Sam, an anti-Semite, Uncle Ben, an Antifa. They'll tell you it's not real. It is real, and it's all by design.
Very clever. Very clever.
Thank you. Anyway, back to Florida. Does everyone forget that New Horizon oil rig that was exploded by BP under Obama?
Yes.
And they poured those hundreds of thousands of tons of core exit, which has been banned in every country except America, on that oil spill. And also I understand that crack was never sealed, and it's still spewing.
It's still
oil
leaking
into the Gulf.
It's still leaking. And, that Corexit did not make the oil go away. It merely made it sink to the ocean floor.
Exactly. And that Corexit is more toxic than any oil could ever be to people and the fishery in that Gulf of Mexico. So I highly recommend that if anybody goes down to Florida, please stay out of the water. And don't eat that seafood. We stopped eating
don't eat the crabs.
Seafood when that happened. And then shortly after that, we had what the Fukushima's going on, right? And, the Gulf Stream's been shut down, and all that water circulating the planet. And hundreds of thousands of tons of of radioactive water is pouring right into the Pacific from Fukushima, and the reactors are still melting down. So, you know, we got some serious problems here. And you know, I know that Trump came from, you know, a cabal. I don't know which one, but I know it's fighting with the faction that was in charge of everything at this point. And I don't know if it was better, but it, you know, I don't like the things that are happening or what have happened since you know, all that went down. And you know, Kwame Kilpatrick, the mayor of Detroit, the ex-mayor of Detroit, who was in prison. You know, Donald Trump pardoned him too. And that one really blew me away, because being from Michigan, that was a real thorn in my side when he did that. I'm blown away. Now they say, oh, they did that. He did that because he wants them to testify against all the players in Detroit that he was working with. And maybe that's true. I don't know, but I haven't seen nothing yet. You know, have you seen that Marshall report, Diane Marshall's blog?
No, I have not.
Trump's ode to the corporation?
No, I haven't seen that.
Look that up. It's a pretty good read. It is a real deep history from 1871 when the federal government incorporated and how we got to where we are today. Now, there might be some fallacies, some fantasies in there about Trump becoming the president of the restored republic and Biden just taking the helm of the de facto bankrupt corporation, and that the military is mopping everything up and seizing all assets. But we still got to wait and see. So anyway, I appreciate your show and all your callers. Thanks a lot, Mike.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Bruce in Texas. Hello, Bruce. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Mike. Hey, I just want to throw this at you. You know, Dominion software?
Yes.
Well, all through the post-election, every court denied every plaintiff presentation of the evidence because they said that they did not have standing.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you got Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani, and probably others are being sued by Dominion for defamation. So how is that even possible in this legal system? If they weren't allowed to present their case in the first place, how can they prove defamation? I don't get it.
Well, you see, these defamation lawsuits actually open up the possibility, you know, of the evidence being allowed into court, because Dominion will come in and say, you defamed me by saying that the elections are rigged, and the defendant will say, well, I would like to present evidence backing up the comments that I made. And while it's true that an extraordinarily corrupt judge can simply say, no, we have a true finding that the election system is honest, you know, at some point, somebody's going to have to give in and allow the evidence to be presented in a court of law. So I think what Dominion is probably doing is they're doing this as a publicity stunt to scare other people away from commenting on their software systems. And in the end, they'll offer a very attractive out-of-court settlement.
Yeah, I believe this is also called a slap suit. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
Or some term like that. Yeah. Basically, they're using their financial wealth to go after a political enemy. That's exactly what it is to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I got for you. I'll let the next caller come on. Hopefully you got one.
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, I've got Mark in New York. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, I got a bunch of things. Thanks for taking my call. Always a pleasure to talk to you. I will take you off as speaker. I wanted to call for a few things. Oh, I'm sorry. I just missed what you said. I'm sure it was just a quip. Anyway.
Yes.
Well, thank you. Look, Kellyanne Conway. I'm a big admirer of her. I was just writing down to organize my thought right off the top of my head. She's got a lot of exposure. Her social circle is huge. She talks to hundreds of people, maybe thousands a year. She's very, very, a true professional in the sense that she's very people-oriented.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about she and her husband, and then what came across was Matlin and Carville. But that's a Republican with a Democrat. With Kellyanne, it's deeper, it's crazier in that she's got a never-trumping Lincoln log of a husband, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And she's like, she's a Trumper in the White House. So you got this daughter there with the husband who you can imagine what the dynamic is. And the theory that I have is from the movie Uncle Buck. Now, this guy comes in, John Candy comes in to the, he's just a relative. And at the end of the movie, I don't have a daughter, but at the end of the movie, there's this big thing where the music's playing and a tear-jerking scene where the daughter comes downstairs, the mother's there, and she's like, hello, Mom. Now, that was back, the tension in that movie. I didn't really understand it, but I kind of do now, especially if you have a bratty teenage daughter or a sister like I had. But today, it's crazier. School just started. I think because of what happened a couple of years ago or whatever last year, that sent. And I'm really surprised that people in Jersey, I was going to get on my high horse and say, hey, you guys in Jersey never denounced these people treating her daughter like that and making her daughter, because her daughter was complaining she's been ostracized from 11 years old. And who knows? Maybe it's part of that. Maybe the daughter's just a drama queen. So I think it's somewhere in the middle. Point is, her daughter got her phone and took a picture of herself topless to screw with her mom. And that's it. And that's
entirely possible. Entirely possible. She's
protecting her daughter, saying no comment, because she's back in school, and she's probably the only one in school. And these Jersey Democrat kids are like teasing her that she doesn't have a phone, and they're screwing with her just because kids are kids. Hey, guess who said about? So she's going nuts. She wants a boyfriend, whatever. She can't talk. She wants her phone. And it's probably pretty rough, and I hope everybody will say a prayer for Kellyanne, her daughter, and her husband. Now, the next thing I have, if there's time, real quick.
Yeah, you got time.
Proof versus evidence. All the social media problems I have, no evidence. No, I have evidence. And my Bernie friends are saying, no, there's no proof. I'm like, so I looked it up, and like there it is. If you Google or search evidence versus proof, proof is a summation of evidence. Now, I finally understood that. Now I understand why they're saying no proof, because the court never investigated, but the judges said, this is crap, get out of here. So they never had a chance to prove it. And I said something about what if your family heirloom was stolen, and you go in to explain to the judge, look, they stole it. They caught him red-handed. Here's all this little bits of evidence. And the judge, go home. We've heard enough. But wait, and now the thieves are out on the street ready to do it again.
Yes.
Now, and now the news can say, well, there's really no proof, right? Because the evidence was never heard or investigated. So that's why it's diabolical, clever, but it's diabolical too, that they're just saying there's no proof. Well, because the evidence was not summated to form a proof.
Yes, that's correct.
The other thing I have is, I'm still getting, if anybody gets the Nazi, which I did get, because they're bringing up this guy, Alex Fields. Now, if you look at Alex Field Jr.'s wiki page, now he's the guy that, allegedly rode over. He was, railroaded. I'm sure they said, look, you're going to get the death penalty. Whatever they did to Stone, we've heard all the stories. I won't go over it again. But the whole thing, his whole page is about like a paragraph or two about him, and the rest is about Trump. And it's great. It's huge, and it's all the page has grown. I invite people to look at that, and then read all that, and then go to Lizzie Grubman's page, where it just says she called people white trash and ran over 16 people. They were all hospitalized. As opposed to this one girl who they have like a Trayvon thing where there's a picture of her at 18. Now, she's like 30 years old 10 years later because she's a waitress. Just unfortunately, she's way overweight, and then she's carrying cigarettes. She couldn't move. She got a heart attack. she was barely, what they're saying, she wasn't even directly hit by the car. And I had to point all this out because this Hitler, they're Nazis. And I was like, well, they're not really Nazis, you know. And I pointed out every minority group, every group has a political action committee. So you're telling me, you know, the 1%, you know, I said, of course there are extremes in there. And like I've said in the past, every neighborhood has one psycho there. And this guy was taking SRIs since almost before the beginning of high school.
That's a warning sign there. Okay, Mark, we got to take a break for commercials. We're coming up on our last segment. I'm going to try and fit 2 callers into this last segment, but we'll be right back. Welcome back to our show, last segment of our program today on this Thursday, and we're going to go to James in Vancouver. Hello, James. What's on your mind?
Yeah, good afternoon. People are talking about spying and so forth. The NSA in the end spies on everybody.
Yes.
So the question is who's running the NSA?
Well, I think the NSA, like most intelligence agencies, tends to run itself.
Yeah. Well, it would be a tight club, and probably Snowden isn't getting his pardon because he's took a lot of things with him when he took off, and you know, it's part of the deal, right?
Well, maybe, but, you know, I think Trump should have pardoned him, you know, because this attack on Snowden and Assange is basically an attack on investigative journalism, which is supposed to be a big part of what journalism is for.
Well, I see that. I see that a little better now than perhaps I did before. I mean, it's not that I didn't agree with the pardon. It's that I was simply looking at what they did and how they were perceived.
Mm-hmm.
One thing about, just to mention, people talk about Hoover. I think Hoover was assassinated.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. There were a lot of people who hated him, but they were afraid of his private files, which was sort of his dead man switch, and nobody knows where those files went after his death.
Right. If you listen to the Nixon tapes, Nixon is complaining to Haldeman about Hoover.
Yes.
But, okay. Well, I'll let you get going there, and thanks for taking my call, and all the best.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We're going to go to Miles in Maine. Hello, Miles. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, aloha, Michael. I heard that call about Rand Paul. If anyone's disappointed in Ron Paul, I'm 100 times, in Donald Trump, I'm 100 times more disappointed in Rand Paul. But my question is this: how can Biden and the pipeline they were going to Canada, how can he do that without the approval of the Congress? How can he just drop it and that be the end of it?
Well, I mean, it's a matter for constitutional lawyers here, but apparently his executive order, I mean, Congress has 30 days to reverse any of these executive orders. But if they don't, it does become the law of the land. But I know they've already implemented the shutdown. People are being let go. They've already implemented the executive order on ending construction on the border wall. That ended Tuesday night, as I recall. And yeah, I mean, he's ruling like a dictator. Stroke of the pen, law of the land.
It hasn't been 30 days yet. So where's Rand Paul and all these guys?
Well, obviously, you know, they're trying to find some spine somewhere in that Capitol building.
Yeah. Let's get these guys on the stick and start yelling at them, calling them up, and tell them, hey, you know, come out here and represent us for a change.
Yes, that would be a refreshing change. Yep.
Yeah,
okay,
I mean,
Miles.
Gas prices go up. This economy is already okay. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, we're in trouble. Sorry, Miles. I got to cut you off. The music is playing. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.